On today's edition of Ignite's SAC Chat videos, we've got special guest star Dr. Mike Markos, board certified Dr. Mike Markos, Nico's brother-in-law. We're going to be talking about coming back from injury and how discipline is essential for rebuilding yourself post-injury, surgery, whatever the trauma was. So, take it away, Doc.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I'd say this all started around 2021 when I had a pretty devastating to me back injury. Having built my athleticism over the last decade in small increments, or probably around 15 years, I had an injury that took me approximately 4 years to recover from. 2 years where I started with non-invasive therapies, tried to power through, keep consistently exercising, but the injury was there and kind of debilitating. Did not use any narcotics or any medications, but I did have injections to my back. Went from chiropractics to everything, dry needling, Pilates. I've tried every modality of non-invasive therapy before I bit the bullet and went to the best spine surgeon probably nationwide and had an endoscopic discectomy, laminectomy. Doing the right thing in the beginning and making sure that you identify your injury, go to a physician and tell the physician, what your goals are. And my goals were not to have a quality of life that was passive, but mine was to be an athlete once again, and that was the goal. That being said, the build-up after injury was definitely ground-up build-up, and that took discipline. Like anything else in life, discipline is not the 1 week motivation after New Year's or the 1 month motivation. And there's a difference between motivation, getting pumped and going out there and doing something, and then getting up every day saying this sucks, and then continuing to grind it out every day. Now, what do I mean by that? I don't mean beating yourself up every day. I mean getting up and doing work, whatever it may be, in a consistent fashion. It all starts with having a strict regimen that starts with rolling out of bed. And if you hit that snooze button, or if you don't hit that snooze button, it's rolling out of bed and getting to work. Are you going to wake up and do 50 squats or 50 kettlebell swings, or drop down and just do some push-ups just to get yourself in that mode? That's where it all begins. That's what I would say.
All right. So I'm going to backpedal with you a little bit. You both had significant injuries. Both have had surgeries to fix those things. Being an athlete generally, you're going to encounter these things because this is a risky thing to do, right? Obviously, when you push yourself to a limit, eventually you find that limit. But outside of athletics, the idea of discipline with anything that you set or attain a goal, or you set out a goal, try to achieve that goal, what is it, in your guys' opinion, what is it that keeps someone on track to attain that goal? So we have different types of motivations, right? We have the intrinsic motivated, we have the people that are motivated by certain things, we have people motivated by other people that help. But I've always tried to pin it, how do I as a coach get people and recognize what their type of requirement is for discipline? Because it is a requirement that I have to try and get them to see, to be motivated to do that thing. Because that's the difficult question. The question, we all know that discipline is required to do a thing. We all know that you have to do that thing consistently to attain that goal. Unless it's a short-term goal. We're talking long-term goals.
Sure.
Right? So whether it's recovering from a surgery, whether it's trying to achieve a degree, whether it's, you've all gone through this in different aspects. You both have done it with your schooling. You both have done it in the gym. What do you do? How do you Like, what is it that we're grasping at? What are we trying to talk about? It's like, how are we pinpointing the idea of discipline, and how do we extract that from people? Because it's not as easy as just get up and do. Because if it was that easy, then everyone would be doing the get up and do mentality.
I don't have a good answer, but I will say for me, it is the get up and do, and that's just the way that I was raised. I mean, playing a sport, having to go to practice, having to go to church, on a Sunday after, having a game on a Saturday and not feeling like, mom, dad, get up, go, we're going, we're doing this, right? It's just, I think you're brought up in a way that whether it's your parents, whether it's a coach, like that consistency gets ingrained in you. And I talk about this all the time. So many people fall in love with the result or the end goal, right? With the 10-pound weight loss, with the 10-pound PR on a lift, right? That's awesome, but that's an instant, it's fleeting. You have to fall in love with that process of getting there, because that's where the discipline comes into play. But how do you coach that? I don't know. I feel like people either have it or they don't, and that's why most people don't have it. Like, we live in a world where everyone's seeking comfort, and you have to be uncomfortable.
So I can't completely agree with that. Everyone doesn't have it. They don't have it for what we do. But I think most people have it in a sense of, I'm trying to achieve something, whether that's being a good dad, getting a promotion, there's the things that they're trying to attain in life, and not only just physical, not only mental, they're emotional too. All those components. So people, they have it, the drive to do something. Most people. In our world, we're really skewed to see more of the people that have drive to do more things, generally speaking. Not only fitness, because usually the people that come in here have higher motivations than most, right? So everyone has a level of desire and drive to do something that requires discipline, that requires consistency. It just might not be the thing that we do here often, and this is our tool and our outlet to do that thing, to get that whatever it is, that feeling, that sensation of achieving something. So I guess for us, you and I, it's figuring out, how do we get people to fall in love with the process?
I got a little story, so in medical school, I was middle of the pack in the beginning, okay student, ran with the average horses by that meaning, making it through every day, right? And after my first semester, I watched my grades.
So you said this was in medical school?
In medical school, yeah. I watched my grades and I was middle of the pack and I was satisfied. I was like, okay. And then I kept watching the top 10 people and they were all there, right? Their numbers. You don't know who it is, but you know who it is. But their numbers are all there, consistent. We would all look at that. And, I said to myself, how do I get from here, middle of the pack, to there? Is it possible, right? And and this likens to, are you motivated? Do you need a training partner? Do you need a goal? So I set a goal. I'm like, I'm going to get there. I'm going to get there. And I want to see how close to there I can get. So I grabbed this one really bright study partner who was motivated, or, he was disciplined. He wasn't motivated. He was disciplined. I would watch him study, and I said, hey, can I study with you? And he's like, yeah, absolutely. He goes, I don't stray for anything. He goes, this is my program. I stick with my program. If you want to come and hang out with me and do what I do, you're welcome to do it. But I'm not going to stray or break to do anything that you want. So you figure yourself out around this, right? So I did that. I actually followed him and we started studying together. And I did exactly the process he had. And it wasn't about brains. I realized that. It was about discipline, because within a matter of 6 months, I was up there in the top 10 with him, right? And it wasn't because I exchanged knowledge or a different way to study. Well, it was a different way to study, but it was pattern, discipline, 6 a.m., all the way through 11 o'clock at night. And the thing is, if I didn't show up in the morning, at 6 a.m. when we'd go study, it'd be like, hey, are you going to be a part of this, or are you going to just do it when you think it's convenient? And once I got to that top level, I never wanted to go down again. So at that point, I applied that to everything I did in medicine. In residency, when I was a chief resident, when I did fellowship, when I became a chief fellow, and then even onwards. And I realized that I had it inside. There is, the phrase of, if you run with the fast horses, you get faster.
Yeah.
If you run with the slow horses, you get slower. I tell that to my kids all the time. You put a goal out there. You target the goal. You may not get to that point, but I bet you will get close to it. And that's where, all these cliches, embrace the suck, wake up and, do it. And, I think in the end of the day, you need a goal. You need to have a plan to get to the goal, and then you need to commit and say, I am committing to this.
Yeah.
That's what I found in medicine and then in athletics.
Funny thing is, those cliches are all true.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, they
I agree.
absolutely are, right? And one of my favorites is from I think it's Carlos Gracie Sr. If you want to be a lion, you got to train with lions. And as it related to my experience, I was always my strongman career was very mediocre and average, but I got a lot stronger and a lot better when I went and I found a group of guys to train with, and they all pushed themselves and pushed me harder and more. And I was competitive with them. Made a big difference in how I performed. I didn't win anything until I was 4 years in, and I started training with these guys. Like, okay, this is what it takes.
Yeah.
So who you surround yourself with.
Yeah,
matters.
It sounds like both of you have had motivated. It sounds like both of you were motivated in those situations by others, by being around the people that were doing the thing you wanted to do.
Mm-hmm.
And for this, it sounds like there is an individual that was intrinsically motivated. He had the plan, and he was going to stick to his plan no matter what. And you found this person. You said, I'm gonna just run with this guy. Whatever he does, I'm going to do. Same when you go into strongman, you go with those people, and there must have been one guy that was self-motivated to then bring in the rest of the guys. You know what I mean? Those are the things I'm looking for. How do we find those people, and how do we identify those types of people, athletes? How do we identify who's motivated in that way and put them with the right people? That's like my whole job, basically, is grouping kids up together with the right people so that they can then buy into the system that someone has already bought into, or the person has the desire to want to buy. Otherwise, if you have a group of individuals that are all negative Nancy's, then you're never going to get anything, no matter how good the system is.
Yeah.
So for you, it's, setting a goal. I've never been set the goal and attain the goal. I've been, how do I get to that? Meaning, like, tell me what the steps are to get there, and I'll do the steps. Tell me the goal, I'm lost. Right? I can't just look at the goal and try to attain the goal.
Mm-hmm.
But if you say, hey, this is what you have to do to get there, I'm like, all right, I'll do that. Done. I can get there.
Well, I'll use nutrition as an example, right? 3 years ago, almost 4, before I had my hip replaced, I knew I wanted to lose some weight to make my recovery easier.
Yeah.
So I knew enough about nutrition to lose a little bit of weight, but until I worked with Mike, right? Not this Mike. With my coach, right? Like, he got me that because he's like Rain Man, Yoda, and Gandalf all rolled into one. He was just like throwing out numbers, telling me what to do. I just followed his plan, and then I got there. And now I know all of that, and it helps me continue that.
Yeah.
Right? Because, like you said, I had the steps. I knew what the parameters were, what needed to happen to get from A to B.
Well, it brings us down to coaching, right? So you just asked, or you said, what's the process? So you said you need a process to get to goal, right? And who helps you through a process? It's a coach, a trainer, a mentor. It's someone who keeps you motivated, knows a process, builds a process, right? Maybe has done that thing before, right? And ferries the rest of the people through it. When it comes down to who is the kid or who is the person you want in the gym, it's the person who's there early, and I'm not saying being there late is a problem. I'm just saying it's the person who stays after, who does that extra rep, who doesn't, you don't ask them. They want to do, right? And it's finding that person and then maybe sticking someone to them who needs more of that, right?
Yeah.
And I think we always had those. In high school I was an athlete, and I watched one of my buddies have a knee injury, and then he would just work out his upper body and do all these things. And this is 30 years ago when working out was really, not as sophisticated as this, right? But I was watching him. He had a knee injury, worked out his upper body, got stronger, didn't use an excuse, kept going and kept finding workarounds. There's a book by Ryan Holiday called The Obstacle is the Way. And I truly believe that, if you get to the point where, you have that discipline, obstacles become building blocks, like my injury, right? That obstacle became, for me, a better way to rebuild myself, find discipline. So in the beginning, you may look at obstacles and say, oh, these are in my way, I don't know, I can't do it, etc. But once you get to that point and you learn how to climb and you learn that process, you find obstacles being like, hey, this is just another challenge. I can get through this. It's another goal. I have the process.
Yeah.
So,
going back to your point, Mike, other Mike, this one. the idea that you said earlier about we're seeking out comfort is very true. And in this book that Mike recommended, which is full of contradictions, by the way, it's like
that's discipline.
Yeah.
Obstacles always another one.
Yeah,
okay.
Yeah. So discipline is full of contradictions because you read one chapter, he says one thing, and then the next chapter he's like, but.
But that's what I like about it.
Else.
That's what I like about it. He uses all sorts of examples, right?
So, to your point, it's the idea that the only way to truly achieve an understanding of achievement is through hardship. You have to do hard things to understand and appreciate the things that aren't difficult, and a level of comfort. We are in a society where things that are stressors shouldn't be stressors. Like words, very difficult. So you like, we're seeking out comfort for what purpose, right? To be comfortable, and then all of a sudden we're comfortable, and then things that shouldn't be difficult become difficult, and then all of a sudden it's not comfortable anymore. So it's a never-ending cycle of, the difference between a shovel and a snowblower. Like a snowblower is much more efficient. It's going to make me want to go outside and do the thing I have to do because it's not going to take me so long. But shoveling gives you a sense of like, yeah, I fucking did that. I shoveled all that snow.
Well, and we can use training as an example, right? If you're pushing yourself in here on an aerobic capacity day, right? If you start in January, by June, you're still going hard.
Yeah.
But your 75% or your 80% effort is different in June than it was in January. And then a year from then, right? Like, it's just because you're always putting forth that hard effort, 60, 70, 80, whatever it is, right? But it doesn't get easier. But again, you learn how hard to push, and you have to push. If you're trying to be comfortable, if you're seeking comfort, you're not going to put any effort in, you're not going to make any progress.
Yeah.
That makes sense?
Yeah, because adaptation, survival, adapt or die, that whole idea, right? That's training. That's mental resilience. That's everything we do requires you to put in the work to get the adaptation that you want, right? Your study habits made you, quote unquote, smarter, not because you were unintelligent before, but because you accessed that part consistently, right? You worked that system. You started to be able to remember things better. You were comprehending information better as you did more of it.
It's building pathways.
Yeah.
It's neural pathways.
Exactly.
It's just, you're building neural pathways.
Yes.
Absolutely.
In here, and this is where people don't understand, exercise is not just exercise. You need the days where you have to find that limit. Otherwise, the limit's never going to change. And that's where other programs, generally speaking, when you just work out to work out, you're not going to get what you want. Because eventually, even if you work your ass off every day, that becomes stagnant. So pushing yourself to the limit becomes stagnant, but then you put yourself at risk. So you need to know and undulate through hard, easy, medium kind of work. People don't get that. They don't really give a shit. And this is just me going on a rant about shitty facilities that just pack their gyms full of nonsense, and people don't truly train. They just exercise.
They're just going through motions.
So coming back to what you guys, coming off of major injuries and understanding that there's a process and that there needs to be some level of pain, discomfort to achieve something more.
Yep.
The problem with physical therapy in general is that we're tied to what insurance will allow us to do, and then once we get to that standard of living that is considered a baseline,
They let you go.
they let you go, and all of a sudden you are so far from performance.
Yep.
That there's a huge gap. I
Yeah.
see it for us all the time. That's why I don't send people to physical therapists in general, usually, because it's get them back to no pain. But then where do we go, right? If
Yeah.
I wasn't a strength and conditioning coach and just a sport coach, then how do I get my guy back to performance? Well, good thing I'm a strength and conditioning coach,
Yeah.
because that's the gap. But people don't look at it that
Well, I'll
way.
never forget when I had my bicep repair surgery. I was doing PT, like 2 or 3 sessions in, and I would do the sessions. I mean, I would attack it. And I'd be like beet red, dripping with sweat. And PT would be like, hey, you need to relax. Want some water? Like, no, I'm here to work.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm looking around at the rest of these people who are barely putting in any effort. Like, they're not sweating. They're
Yeah.
not red faced. Like, because they're just going through the motions.
Yep.
Like for this to actually work and be beneficial to me, I gotta push myself.
Yeah.
So I pushed myself. But she was so like, it was uncommon for her to see that.
Yeah.
Well, that's exactly. So you said the gap, right? And PT's there to get you from injury to activities of daily living,
Yeah.
right? So being able to stand up from a couch, right? But the gap that you're talking about, the prescription of how to make you a better athlete, a better performance anything, and I think athleticism's key, right? You need someone who does it in a prescribed way with a process that is that has physiology behind it, that is well studied, that shows results, and those are all the things that you've done over the last 12, 15 years here, right? I think 15 years, and I think I've been along that ride, and I've watched your process, and it works, right? So you need people to guide you through and have a process in order to get you to the levels you want to be. I never want to just be activities of daily living.
Yeah.
To me, and you said we're all in this comfort crisis. That's a book, by the way. We're all in this
We just
comfort.
plugging books.
I like plugging
Can we
books.
get on YouTube?
Gotta,
Get some
gotta get some hits on that,
yeah,
right?
some
But
royalties or
truly,
whatever.
we live in 70 degrees, right?
Yeah.
70-degree world. Warm water, when you want it, and everything is just comfortable.
Yeah.
And we got to push through. Now, your prescription is how to get someone to be a consistently excellent athlete, right? And to do it with minimal risk of injury, rebuild after injury, and I think that all works because I've seen it work
Yeah.
here.
Yeah, frustration is that again, I say this as fitness for me, and I think I can speak for Mike as well, is this is a tool to teach people certain things that they're capable of doing. Once they realize they're capable of doing something that's very difficult physically, you can see that there's spillover into those other things. That they'll shy away from pushing at work or doing the thing that they need to do that they were scared to do before to achieve something more outside of just the 4 walls of the gym. So I've always been, especially when I talk to the younger athletes, is that this is a tool, and I don't say it in this way because they're more concerned about the sport, becoming better at the sport. But this is my tool to teach kids and people in general that hard work there's a system. When you follow the system, you put yourself in uncomfortable positions, you try and push the limits, you then learn how to do that on outside or off the field, off the track, outside of the gym. And that's the thing that I like about fitness, is that you can use this to teach other skills, to teach the things that are very difficult to learn outside of sport. And this is maybe it was just for me. I didn't know how to learn those other things through school. I wasn't taught in a way that connected with me to learn how to be a better student, to put a plan in place to achieve Y, and Z. Teachers would just give you homework, but they didn't really teach you what it meant to do that thing or relate it to the thing that you like to do. So this is my tool of being able to show someone the path and saying, if you follow this path, you can achieve this, and then you could take that same concept, that same system, and put it into every other aspect of your life.
Well, I say it all the time. Training is more than just physical. It is as much, if not more so, mental. There's an emotional piece to it.
Yeah.
Like there's days when I come in and I don't want to do it. I just don't. But I do it anyway.
Yeah.
And every time I feel better walking out. Or if I come in and I'm pissed off about something.
Oh yeah,
I
that's the one.
use that anger, that stress, that frustration, and again, I feel better when I'm done,
Yeah.
right? And there was one day in here I kind of, the kids were griping about something into the music, and I kind of went, hey, focus, like just
Yeah.
think about your breathing, think about your technique, your form, like really, because there's the mental piece to this. If you're going through the motions, that's when bad things will happen.
Yep.
You can get hurt, like.
Yeah.
So, in what both of you guys said, when I was peak in my studying, the only break I would take was to work out every day. And, there's science behind it, working out while you're studying for those kids going to college, right? Or for those kids in school or professional school, or even for us, right? When your brain is taxed, if you go out and build your body, your brain will benefit.
Oh yeah.
Your brain will. It is absolutely. It's there's science behind it, but more importantly, you can feel it.
Oh, yeah.
You clear your brain. You get you're ready to learn again, right? It is the absolute best snack. And even in in my day, I run an intensive care unit. Even in my daily work, I will take a break. I will do 6 floors of stairs, or just around the stairs, and I'll walk a block, and I'll come back, and that complicated patient that I've been thinking about, or the person that I want to take good care of, clarity happens in that
Yeah.
moment, right? And I can take care of my patients better.
Yeah.
When I work out in the morning before I start my rounds, right, I have absolute clarity, so I can teach my residents and take care of my patients. So there's absolutely, there's fact behind it. The Romans, the Latin phrase "mens sana in corpore sano" means strong mind, strong body. That all makes that's thousands of years old. This has been proven,
Yeah.
right? So
We're going to try to wrap this up. We've been going almost 30 minutes.
yeah,
Yeah.
let's close it up.
Yeah, that's fine. How do you want to wrap it?
I'm not supposed to see. I heard somebody
It's
coming.
Casey.
Okay.
Yeah. Well, yeah, I think.
So, did we answer your question? I don't know if we answered.
Did
your
we answer
question.
your question?
I think we can't, because it's still the same thing. The question is, you have the motivation to do it when you're not, and the discipline and the consistency to do it when you're not feeling it.
And how do I coach that?
How do you coach that? That's the, and again, we
You
say the
train
word
that.
coach, but yeah, how,
Yeah,
how
You
do you
train that. You make people into that.
But you
So
know what?
here's my thing to that. I don't ever push kids to come. I never say you have to be here, because I know that I don't want to be that tyrant. That's not my personality. I will never tell a kid you have to be here, but I will say it's recommended to be here.
Sure.
This is the plan, and you should be training X number of days a week.
Yep.
If you follow this, you'll see success. Now, teaching them that outcomes are different than success, that outcomes, that you have to have realistic outcomes, and I can tell you what realistic is, and this is specifically track and field, what realistic is versus what you think it is. And if someone has an unrealistic goal, I'm going to tell you that this plan that I have won't get you there, but I'll tell you how to get there. And if you miss even one day, you're never going to achieve that thing, because you didn't commit to that thing. But that's the plan. How do you get someone to sit down and do that without, because I message athletes here and there asking where they're at, this and that, but I won't tell them, and I won't be mad if they don't show up, because I know that all it is this is, if they're ready for it, they will be here. But you can't I can't just tell them this is what you have to do, or you have to be here to do this or else. Because then what are we? Then we're just a place that people are gonna hate because
Order givers.
yeah.
Yeah.
And like, so you train it. To me, it's like like you say, you train that in a way where people want to be in the environment. That's my thought.
Sure.
It's like you try to create an environment that they want to be there. But then it's still, they might be there, but are they doing it the way it should be done? I said yesterday, I put on the board, because generally we say, hey, we want to go heavy, X, Y, and Z. What is heavy? Because my philosophy is every day heavy feels different.
Okay.
So you can't lift your 3RM at this all the time, whatever. But yesterday I said 95%. This is what it has to be. Because we haven't pushed, heavy has not been what it needed to be over the last few
Sure.
months. So I said 95% of your 3RM, it has to be that. And you see that some kids were just like, I can't do this. This is so difficult. And it was just because it's like, oh, it's Christmas break, man.
Yeah.
It's winter break.
Yeah.
They're not focused on that thing. And their 3RM from 2 weeks ago is different because they've been sleeping and sitting on their asses for 2 weeks. Or hanging out with their friends till midnight and not sleeping.
Yeah.
Not eating right.
One more thought, back to the how do you coach it, and I think it's damn near impossible to coach it, but I'm a big fan of lead by example.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't post every workout because I just think it's annoying when people do that. But once a week, I'll post something, me lifting,
Yeah.
just so people remind people, hey, Mike's old and broken, but he still does this stuff,
Yep.
right?
Yeah.
And my daughter, she knows, when she's not at school or she's home and I've come home from the gym, I walk in, I got my blender bottle, I got my bag. She knows I've been to the gym. She sees it time and time again, and I'm hoping at some level, that's sinking into her, Dad's always going to the gym, right?
Yeah.
It's just in her mind, it's there. So lead by example. So maybe not coaching directly, but set a good example.
Yeah. This is what I've been getting frustrated with on having now, almost a 1-year-old, seeing that she doesn't have limitations. She has physical abilities, and that's it. And she knows what her abilities are, but explores. But when other people say certain things like, don't do that, oh my God, and react in certain ways, rather than assisting the exploration, you can see the hesitation.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I have this jungle gym at the house, and I put things on top of it. And if they are just slightly out of her comfort zone, she won't attempt it. So enticing her to get to that thing and push out. And now at this point, I have not taught her how to do this. She crawled to the top, went scaled across the top of it, and I was astonished at the fact that she did this thing without any sort of coaching, but she was allowed to explore in an environment that was safe for her to feel comfortable and confident. We see people that have been beaten down and broken, especially on the adult side, and have been instilled with fear, right?
Yeah.
The deadlifting that we were talking about a few weeks back.
Yep.
Have been instilled with fear. Well, you had to create an environment where they feel safe to allow exploration and that comfort level, and that's where. But that's difficult.
Yeah.
Because you're not in control of every bit of their life.
Yep.
As a 1-year-old, right? I'm in control of everything that she does.
Yeah.
You've said something important, is that you set for your kid, right? You made a safe environment, right? You enticed, you coach. You build the same thing here, right? The environment's safe, the coaching is sound. Then it's up to the person to break through their barriers, right?
Yeah.
And truly, it takes all types, right?
Yeah.
But there's that kid who's going to be a role model, like my colleague who, pushed me through. I looked at him and I found a role model.
Yeah.
You'll find a kid who will see another kid and say, I want to do that, or I want to be like that person.
Yeah.
And that's what it is. You can't make, there's a bell-shaped curve in everything. And everybody isn't at the ends of the bell-shaped curve. They're in the middle, right? So you're trying to bring everybody to that 1%, right? To that 10%, to that maximum ability, right? And realistically speaking, you may not be able to, right? You can shift the curve, you can bring people to their potentials, but I think it's up to them, right? Yeah. Michael Phelps worked out, and I know, you can critique him, you can say whatever. one thing about Michael Phelps, he trained 7 days a week.
Yeah.
And that's what he said. I train 7 days a week because that is one extra day that other people aren't training, right? And one of the greatest swimmers of all time, he had that thing, right? He may not have gone 100% that 7th day, but he trained, right? So you ask yourself, can I get everybody to that point? Probably not. Can you make everybody that hits this gym a little better than they were? Absolutely. And I think that's the key.
Yeah, absolutely. That's a good place to stop.
Yep. That's what.
Yeah.
It's a wrap.